an early start here. Are you good in the mornings? Are you early? Are you up? Are you running? Are you fit? Getting the fitness in? What are your mornings like?
I love an early morning. My partner would totally disagree, as in he hates early mornings. But yeah, for me, the morning is quiet time. It's the moment where I can be most productive. I can get loads done in the mornings compared to the evenings. I just kind of deteriorate. But I think with fitness, I try and keep that for later on in the day. I just find that there's more clarity and kind of quiet, and I can get on with some work or just start the day.
It's something I like to discuss with adventurers and people that go into different environments, for the jungle or the cold or wherever they may be. Do you vary your training for a project that you're going on, or are you just trying to keep sort of a steady fitness level that you know that you'll be okay when you get to the start of an adventure or an expedition, and your body will sort of react when you're out there? How do you sort of maintain the levels?
That's a really good question. So only for the first time recently have I had to consider like specialized training with a bit more kind of focus. So I'm going to be that really annoying person that says in the next few months I can't tell you too much, but there's one project coming up in January where I'm required to do a lot of diving, potentially free diving, a lot of snorkeling, just lots of in water filming. So that has changed things a little bit, but largely to be honest, physical fitness has always been something that's important for me in my mental health, and it's very important for shoots, but I've always tried to keep a level of fitness that kind of fits in with me and makes me feel ready to go, as opposed to striving for massive upper body strength, or feeling really, really strong on my legs or whatever it may be. It could just be overall fitness, really.
From watching, looking at your Instagram and everything you do, you can be sleeping on the side of a rock face and climbing those cliffs or underwater. So yeah, it's so interesting to watch you guys in different varieties of expeditions that you go on.
Yeah.
So for instance, does going underwater, does doing something beneath the surface, does that worry you? Or are you so acclimatized to that now, or is every single adventure sort of a bit nerve-wracking until you get into it?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. I've never really thought of it like that, mainly because I'm just pumped to be there. I think it's a real privilege to be able to do these things and be able to integrate that adventurous side into the filming. But of course, there is the filming aspect. So, being honest with you, I would say filming actually slows things down sometimes, not necessarily with wildlife, but to actually create a sequence and put together a full story. You may have extra time and that, the luxury of extra support to be able to deliver a dive shoot in the right way. I guess the thrill of that then is if a whale is passing, or you've got all of a sudden a feeding frenzy off the coast, no one's going to wait for you, no film crew is going to dictate that, so you just got to get in and get on with it. That's the moment for me where I guess having that basic level of skill is really important, because that should always just slot in and just happen. And then your main priority is ensuring that not only is the film team getting the right shots, the right sequences, both with you and that animal, but also that you are prioritizing your behavior in the water, say, for example, with that animal as well, because I guess that's when my biology brain kind of switches in, because I'm always mindful of the ethics about being in the environment of an animal as it's behaving naturally. But it's complex. It does change from shoot to shoot.
I obviously, knowing you were coming on the show, and as I tend to do, I listen to other podcasts, get sort of a sort of background of your story and things like that. I love that there was a bit of content that I heard you talking about when we discuss your environments, that I'm kind of, you could say I live in the countryside here and outside Edinburgh and East Lothian. So my kids don't see foxes that regularly because there's so much room for them to roam. We were at Grandad's house on Saturday after the rugby. We were at the Scotland match. We're sitting in the lounge and a fox appears at my granddad's back garden at the back door, and the kids were mesmerized.
Oh, wow.
But is that a concern, that a fox shows up in broad daylight and he's not feeding them. He can't stand them being in his garden because they're tearing up his garden. And when
really?
and when the cubs, so he's hilarious, Grandad, but to that extent. But my kids are captivated, and I've got it on the camera with the kids, and it's Instagrammed and all that sort of stuff. But with you, in the way you're looking at environments, and you are you worried about how we are impacting, say, foxes on their environment, where they have to live, where they're now living really in amongst us?
Well, it's interesting hearing you talk about that, because I guess as you said, what's different between your granddads and, say, in the middle of London is that fox perhaps may be a bit bolder in the day because it's not used to seeing people, left, right and centre. If you are in a bit more of a rural and an open environment. That being said, we have transformed how foxes interact and behave here in the UK. I mean, we are now a fragmented landscape, and foxes have done an incredible job at adapting to that. It is a worry, because you find the foxes are now having to move in ways they've never had to before to find food. They're now scavenging for food. They're completely changing their basic ecology, and their environment is nothing like it was before. That being said, they have made the most of these urban environments. They have pushed into areas like Bristol, where you see them regularly, or London, where you see them all the time, and they are capitalizing on what is kind of open food resources. So
there's every chance a fox has had the remains of a Big Mac. You know what I mean? Like, or a fish supper. That's kind of what these animals, they'll scavenge anything.
Yeah, but if you go back a little bit, and speak to older generations who tended to live more in, rural environments, open environments, seeing a fox would be a regular thing. Seeing a hedgehog would be a regular thing. So I think it's just that we just live in a very different world here in the UK now, and it's just a completely different landscape. And to assume that the foxes are not going to adapt, I think is actually short-sighted for the fox, because they're incredible creatures. They're so intelligent, and they've done a remarkable job at adapting.
You say we're living in a different sort of, for me, I want to get onto the scorpions, because to me that is a completely different world that you have opened my eyes to, that there's scorpions in the UK.
Yeah.
Where is that, and how has that happened?
Yeah. So I should start by saying they're non-native. I want to avoid by saying invasive, because that has really negative connotations, but they're non-native, and they live in a massive dock wall in the Isle of Sheppey. There's about 12 to 15,000 of these yellow-tailed scorpions. They have spread to various of the docks. They were brought over on a cargo ship, but they've been there for a while and settled, and they've somehow adapted to live in the cracks of these walls. And it's a really interesting place, because by day, the Isle of Sheppey, especially in the dock, it's quite a quiet place. There's a few pubs where everyone's having a good time. Apart from that, there's not really a lot going on. It's not very active around the area. But as soon as kind of darkness falls, there's these people just come to this wall with UV lights. It's the strangest thing to just scan the wall for fluorescent scorpions just sitting in these cracks. It's fantastic.
Are they poisonous? Can they sting you? Well, obviously they can, but is it a bad sting?
It's about the same as a bee sting. So yeah, but there's two reasons why you would never want to touch yellowtail scorpions. Firstly, because you just don't want to really touch a scorpion. Secondly, the moment you touch that scorpion, because they're non-native, you're unable to, essentially, if you were to pick it up, you're unable to release it, because then you would be responsible for releasing a non-native species. So actually it's a really delicate species. And I think a lot of people, what I was really shocked at is there's a lot of people in Sheppey who don't even know they exist in this wall. And it's just a fabulous thing to go. I would highly recommend going with your little one.
So if someone took one away, and I'm not suggesting I'm going to brought it to Edinburgh, brought it somewhere, could they get in a lot of trouble for moving it?
Oh yeah,
Really?
exactly. As an accidentally introduced species, the minute that you are handling that, you are part of that. You're responsible for what happens to that scorpion.
Wow.
So the moment you touch it, essentially because you'd have to put it back, right? Unless you kept it forever. But I don't know the license around if you kept that yellowtail scorpion in your bedroom or whatever. But the moment you have handled it, you're responsible for the scorpion, and you will be essentially releasing it a non-native. So there you go. Don't handle the scorpion.
Don't touch them. Don't touch them in the first place. Speaking of scorpions and things, have you ever been in danger? Have you ever been in a position with a big cat or a reptile or anything where you've thought, oh, hold on, we need to get out, we need to get out here quite quick?
Yeah. I'd say there was two stories that stand out in my mind, and it was a real kind of juxtaposition of just epicness and slight worry. So a few years ago, I decided I want to do, I've always loved elephants, always wanted to be an elephant scientist, never quite knew what that would look like. So I spent a few months in Kenya monitoring elephants with an organization out there, and it gave me a real opportunity to be on the ground and, you know, do things like IDing elephants by following them all day in the trucks. And there was one particular herd led by this beautiful matriarch. And we went from real scrubland and moved into like an open area. And she just decided, we'd been with her for about 6 hours taking pictures, trying to get those open ears, which is really important for the IDing. And she just decided she just had enough of our truck. We obviously maybe got a bit too close, or, you know, were there for too long. And she honestly charged us for about 15 minutes, just continually pushing us out of this area until we were bombing it. And in one of those 4x4s, like going over a road that isn't really a road, so holding on for dear life. It was kind of a terrifying moment, really humbling, let's say. There's that. And then I'd say the other time, again, was in Kenya, and there was these, unfortunately, extreme rains, you know, out of season, the weather in Kenya, and we've just heard in the news, you know, huge droughts, devastating all sorts of species, you know, wild, and then also cattle for a lot of the local communities there. But we were out researching wild dogs, myself and a colleague, and we decided just before last light to try a little bit further for these wild dogs, and we were VHF tracking them, and we came across a whole pack of wild dogs just before it was sunset. It was beautiful. You know, they were yipping, they were chatting, they were about to start a hunt. We followed them, watched them for a while, and off they went. Little did we know that that was the start of one of probably the worst nights of our life, because we started to make our way back, and the rains just came. And everything flooded. The car broke down. There was a gentleman on his bike who got in the car as well because he just couldn't get anywhere. He'd fallen off. And we were basically stuck in the bush for a night. It was absolutely fantastic. We just managed to find the local conservancy manager who helped us kind of just get set up for the night. And we were stuck at this river crossing where there was hippos, and it was absolutely brilliant. Loved it, but it was slightly terrifying.
Did I say this the right way? You'd be like a travel agent's dream when something goes wrong on an adventure and you just absolutely love it. Most people would put a bad review in, and you are in your element. It's like, how are we going to get out of this? This couldn't be worse, but it's amazing.
Yeah. Do you know, it's a funny one, because I guess you have adventures through broadcasting and through those projects, and then also, you know, I like to go out on my own personal projects, or if there's an organization I like to work for, or, you know, recently we filmed in the Amazon on an expedition, which will be a film, but it's not, you know, through the BBC or through a big broadcast, and they just offer different things in terms of adventure and levels of risk. I don't know why that is, perhaps because there's, you know, planning and risk assessments to consider, but yeah, you can really cherry pick good moments from all of those in different ways.
What did you see in the Amazon? What is that like when we hear, sort of sitting here in the comfort of the UK, about the rainforest disappearing, everything, wildlife disappearing? How bad is it over there? What did you see, and what are the effect of humans having on that? Obviously, there's a lot of deforestation and they're taking away the livelihood of the animals. But what did you see, and how worried are you about it?
It's an interesting question in reference to the recent expedition I went on, because I was in a part of the Amazon which isn't experiencing that huge deforestation. I'm yet to see with my very own eyes, you know, blankets of fields that have been utterly destroyed. But chatting to, for example, we're going to Brazil in a few weeks, and chatting to the people who are on the ground day in, day out, they are sick to death with the awful politics and the huge amount of destruction. Essentially, the Amazon are the lungs of the planet, and we are destructing it. We are destroying it at such an alarming rate. I think it should be it should be a worry for everyone. That being said, this expedition, yeah, it was kind of a really different experience. So we were in a part of the Amazon where it's largely been unexplored. There's a river called the Blanquillo River, which only a small local community have really explored via these kind of small dugout canoes. And the idea was to take eDNA, environmental DNA samples from these rivers to find out what lives there, because there's still so many unknowns about parts of the Amazon. And that also is important in its protection and understanding how we can go on to conserve it. Because if you've got, you know, critically endangered species and local communities who depend on these rivers, then, you know, ultimately you've got a case for saying this area is in need of high protection. So the Amazon itself was an unreal experience in terms of what you see. If you were to actually go down the river, so our expedition started with basically a 2-day journey into the rainforest. And you get deeper and deeper, and it's a really surreal thing because it's so vibrant, it's so diverse, it's so incredible. But it's more of you're in an environment as opposed to, you know, you're on an open grassland where you're seeing elephants roaming or giraffes or whatever it may be. So you're going down this river, and there was all these logs and trees over the river, fallen into the river. And it was a case of actually trying to navigate over, under, around all of those. The one thing I do remember was the fish-eating spiders, which are fabulous. Google them if you haven't heard of them before.
No, I don't want to. It sounds terrifying.
Brilliant though. I know, I knew nothing about them, but they almost like sit on the edge of these logs at where the water meets the log, and they have their kind of front feet almost like touching the water, and then they'll basically fish for actual fish. So you have to.
So that's the bait. They're putting their feet are the bait.
Just to sense movement, essentially.
Okay, so they're not waiting for fish to come up and try and think
Give
their
them a
feet
high
are bait. No, I think the fish might think the spider's feet are bait, and then the spider pounces. That was what went through my head there.
That's a great logic. That's a really good logic. I think, you know, like with all spiders, those sensory hairs are so crucial to everything. And so they're able to detect movement, including us. So I think, you know, there was multiple times at nighttime where we were going under these logs, and you just shine a light, and there's honestly this fish-eating spider the size of my hand staring back at you, and they're so quick. They can be quite aggressive, but yeah, they were a fabulous species to see up close. And yeah, essentially, where was I going with this?
Well, no, I'll take over. I'm thinking anacondas, pythons.
We saw anacondas, yeah.
Did you?
Yeah, we saw an anaconda. Yeah, we did. We saw a big female who was tucked in kind of along the side of the river. There was peccaries. They're basically like these giant pigs. And I didn't see one with my own eyes, but they kind of group in their hundreds, and you can hear them and you can smell them coming through the forest. And it's this really, it was, when we passed these peccaries, we were on the river and we had to be completely still. And it was one of these moments of being reminded of how tiny you are in this massive environment, because they're moving through this rainforest and they know you're there, and they're all squealing and moving through this kind of really dense environment. But yeah, it's just it's a really hard environment to describe, because it's almost like a feeling.
And I'm going to go back to primary school biology, poison arrow frogs and things like that.
Yeah, so I mean, there absolutely are frogs and toads in the Amazon. So we did see plenty of moths and butterfly species, plenty of spiders. I was attacked by many bees and wasps accidentally because we were literally walking through trails that are so old, or basically not there, to try and A, set up camera traps, and B, find the right places for these samples. So yeah, it was a really epic expedition.
And are you putting tents up, or are there camps, or are you still staying with the small villages? What's the living accommodation like? What are you doing?
Yeah, so it was myself and the filmmaker in hammocks, and the local community. They had set up on previous time they had been in a near location. They set up this kind of hut where they cooked and where we all kind of gathered before we then went off for the day to take the samples. So it was proper in the middle of nowhere.
And it goes back to my first question about fitness, because you've got long distance walking there, you've got kayaking, you've got carrying kit, you've got everything. So it's a full body it's like not the CrossFit sort of mythology that you've got to have the full body, but you've got to be ready for everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say that was a real test of fitness, because it, as you said, because it encompasses so much. And obviously, you know, I'm one of two. We're a very small film team, so it's a case of I had my own camera to do my own self-shooting and tripod and everything. So you really have to just get stuck in, to be honest. And then what's even more strange is, I mean, you're spending all day every day eating rice and eggs, only rice and eggs, which I'm sure you can imagine wreaks havoc in many ways. But is really, again, like I really like to get stuck into that environment in every way and live very much like the locals are living. And as I say, it's a big privilege to be there and be part of that. So, you know, it really opened my eyes to what life is like for these people who live beautifully in this environment, you know, fishing for Amazon catfish, or just, you know, having chickens and eating eggs and having rice and plantain. It's great.
What about, I mean, was it the last couple of years, or certainly within the last 10 years, there was was it a researcher or somebody that went out to meet a village that it was undiscovered and they killed them?
Yes.
How many sort of those villages and people do you think are still out there, undiscovered, unaware of what's going on in our world? Do you think there's many of them left?
There are. So uncontacted tribes. It's funny you mentioned that, because near the Blanquia River where we were, if we kind of went another hour south, so we were chatting to and actually based with, before we went on this expedition, we were based with a researcher who's lived in the Amazon for 20 plus years, and he spoke about where we were heading to. I mean, it's not mapped. You can't really find it, you know, you can't just go to this Blanquia River. You have to know the area. And he visited that same area about 10 years ago. And when he got there, he saw footprints in the mud. And he was told by the locals that 100% those uncontacted tribes knew that they were there and were probably quite close. So they had been in that area, you know, the past couple of days, which was an unbelievable thought, because we were in a similar kind of area. So I wouldn't be surprised if they probably knew that we were in the area. I mean, we were like an hour or so away from where this footprint was found. But there are uncontacted tribes out there. That story of that gentleman being killed it's a really sad story. I believe he was a missionary wanting to share his wisdom with local communities and to help them. But ultimately, these uncontacted tribes don't want to be contacted. And there's, I believe, a number of legislations and laws being put in place to protect them, because essentially, I feel like we have a desire to learn more about them when they are perfectly happy, you know, living their life in a way that is, we'd never quite understand, and we should respect that, essentially. But it's a mind-blowing thought.
Well, it is. And actually, you put a post out recently on Instagram about simplicity and about how to. I mean, we've got so many distractions, so much stuff going on, so much kit, so much content to watch, to read, where these people, these uncontacted tribes, they have none of that. They get up and they need to find their food. They can light fires, they can cook, they can do these things. They're reproducing, they're probably educating their children, not in the way we think, but in their own language and how to survive.
So that I did recently write something about that, because for the first time in a while, I'm the worst for kind of being completely busy all the time, you know, forgetting to completely ground yourself. That's why I think, you know, time spent running on trails or outdoors genuinely reminds me of, like, it basically grounds me on a regular basis. So that's why I really, really thrive in an outdoor environment. But recently I took a bit of time off, which is quite rare. And I mean, the Amazon was a perfect example. And this week off was a perfect example, because actually you get so much happiness from just, you don't need stuff. You don't need, you know, complexity. Obviously our lives are built in a way that kind of become complex and make us kind of get caught up in the movement of it all. I think it's important to kind of sometimes take a moment to just try living a bit more simply, or go back to basics. I don't know if you find the same thing, but
I struggle with it. I struggle to switch off. My wife, we celebrated my wife's 40th last week, and we went to the Lake District for a couple of days. No kids, all 3 kids left here with Granny. We struggled to not do anything.
Really?
Yeah. We did. I think life is so busy, whether it's school clubs, whether it's business, podcasts, events, whatever we're doing. We really, really struggled to switch off. And we talked about the fact that like when we were there, when we were trying to be present, like literally saying, can we just understand that we're here and we do not have to do the school run. We don't have to hit record. We don't have to go for a run. We did go for a run. We did do things that we said we wouldn't, because we'll regret it if we don't.
Yeah.
It's hard to switch off from life.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you should say that. You know, I was with my partner, and we also went running, we went out exploring. But I think, you know, you have to almost kind of let yourself do what you feel like doing in that moment, but recognize that, yeah, we are really on the hamster wheel of life at the minute, because everything is instant and now and fast paced. So we really need to kind of sometimes just remind ourselves of that. And I think that's the first good step.
we actually identified that when we were in this hotel and we were supposed to be doing nothing, we were planning for Monday to be as busy as possible. We're actually, yeah, we're like, well, hey, we've got this time now. Let's ruin ourselves next week. Let's get back to normal and double down on the kids' football. And I'll set up 10 podcasts, and then I've got all the work to do, and I've got this, that. And so what are we doing? Just chasing busyness. And are you actually in control of everything you're doing? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But then when you talk about these things, like you've just said, you do the same thing. You know, we're all doing it.
Yeah. I've always been, I don't know why or where this has come from, but I've always been of the mentality that if you work hard now, you can play later. I don't know why. Since I was younger, you know, even in uni and in sixth form, I remember that being a really important part of kind of my career goals or where I want to go. I really want to build up I'm quite career driven. I want to build up a really strong career and be busy. I feel like when I am busy, I'm also, you know, thriving at my most, delivering in the best way. If I'm, you know, have a week of craziness and then I go and do a live broadcast or presenting or something, I tend to deliver better than if I've had quite a sluggish or slow week. Don't know why that is.
I get it. I totally, if I've got event, podcast all around the day job, then no, on Friday night I'm at the rugby hosting that. Saturday night I've got a book launch or something. It's event at a time. It's stage after stage. I can see my week. I'm nervous about that one. That one will go fine. I totally get what you're saying there. See, when I shut down at Christmas time and there's that lull, I know I'll get ill. I'll get a head cold. My body will just go, oh. And then I hate it. And it's almost like you keep going. You can't keep going forever. But if you're working and operating at a high pace, and I'm talking about here like at work and on a podcast, you're out in the Amazon with things that can kill you. So it's slightly different what I'm talking about. But I get what you mean. If you're constantly operating, and when you speak to Everest summiteers and all the adventurers and the people that achieve incredible things, they're constantly at that level of having to make the right decision, keep pushing, keep driving. So I get it. And it works on all levels. As soon as you take your foot off the pedal and you get a bit lethargic and energy goes and you drag yourself to that event or you drag yourself to the start line, you'll have a different result, more than likely.
Yeah, I think this is, and it does sound cliche, but really and truly in those sluggish moments, I have to be in the outdoors. I have to just be, and even that in a way, some people would say that's not switching off, but for me, that is my switching off. Even if it's just, you know, sitting outside or going for a walk or relaxing. I don't know why, it's just, it kind of grounds you, brings you back to reality. Yeah.
Imagine how hard was COVID for you? I imagine you had your phone on your hands and knees crawling around the garden, try to find something to talk to or talk.
Were you there? Were you in the garden? No, it's exactly what I was like. I was, honestly, I was up earlier throughout every day in COVID. I went into super regimented schedule. I'd get up at 5, I'd go for a run. By 6:30 or 7, this is every day. I was staying with my auntie because my parents here, I was doing shopping for them, but I couldn't stay with them. My mum is vulnerable. She has MS. So I was helping out the family, but we're living with my auntie, which is great. She has her house backs onto an open, abandoned field. So you've got access to owls and owl pellets and foxes and badgers. And we saw all of them, which was amazing. But obviously I'm thinking, shit, I need to do more. So I created two series I created just on YouTube and through social media. One was called Earth Live Lessons. So they were daily 20-minute lives with guests, scientists, explorers, speakers from, around the world. Everyone from, female cinematographer Sophie Darlington, Steve Backshall, Doug Allen, scientists all around. We did over 120 speakers over COVID. And it was just an educational resource for kids who wanted to learn about something fun every day. So that's on YouTube still, if anyone wants to see that. That led to me getting a Nat Geo YouTube mini series called Meet the Expert. So that again was, from our home, still in the height of COVID, where I interviewed 5 scientists, Nat Geo explorers from wherever they were in the world. We interviewed Manatee Man, and he talked about him rescuing manatees, and we interviewed a venomologist, which was epic. That's on the Nat Geo YouTube channel. And then, because I was obviously going into hyperdrive, honestly, it was the strangest experience.
I love it. It's awesome because so many people shut down. You just got after it. You just went for it.
So, but I'll come back to this because it's an interesting point. Then I was like, right, well, my favourite place on earth, Skomer Island, Welsh Island, absolutely beautiful, alive right now in the height of summer. I think this is when we went into like the later part of the summer, so where the puffins and the everything is going on there. I said to the wardens and the Wildlife Trust, we need to set up a series about Skomer Island because A, the Wildlife Trust depends on the money from tourists to survive, and that was gone. And B, there's a whole island kicking off and no one's on it, and there's loads going on. So the Wildlife Trust set up cameras around the island to kind of, to showcase what's going on at the puffin burrows and things. And we did 7-episode series live, where we kind of went live to the island. We spoke to the wardens. We ended up raising, I was really happy with this project actually, because we raised £100,000. And David Gray, who's fabulous, he actually wrote a song for us for the fundraiser called Running on the Waves. It's about Skomer Island. So I had a nuts COVID.
But were you that I was going to say crazy, were you that but what if COVID hadn't come, if we hadn't been thrown into that, were you that busy? Were you that entrepreneurial? Were you that, I'm going to make this up, I'm going to phone them, I'm going to chase that, oh, now Nat Geo are on the phone, let's go?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm not trying to be critical of what we were all kind of like before COVID. Life was life. I'll keep going. This show, I thought this podcast was over when COVID started.
Really?
And my producer that I've now, he said, take your kit home, get it out the studio. And then he set me up online. So I do, the whole show is completely me now. I don't have the producer working on it, but I got 100 podcasts with people all over the world when COVID hit. And my show just elevated when I could reach out to people wherever. Previously, I was waiting for people to come to Edinburgh and I'd say, could you come to my studio? That was restricted. So I mean, it's COVID, as bad as it was and it affected everybody, we're still recovering in some pockets and listening to what you created. And I've got down here your Earth Live Lessons, I've got your YouTube channel, I've got all these things. I didn't know that tempo really increased through COVID. It's awesome to see the people that did grasp it and thought, I've got a chance here, or I'm not going to sit still.
Yeah, I think, I totally know what you mean about the openness, I think, of people to talk, because I think you're right. Suddenly there was access to, we were all brought down to the same level, which I loved. There was access to people who were just sat at home now, who may be off filming mega series and all the rest of it. And they were just up for a bit of a chat. And it was a great opportunity to, I guess, collaborate in a time where I think most people really needed to have that collaboration and just feel inspired and remind ourselves of how important it is just to sometimes chat or learn or open your eyes. I think the Earth Live Lessons was inspired by the fact that kids were just sat at home. I don't have kids myself, and I found it, really, if I was in school, I'd be gutted if I all of a sudden had my my daily life with my friends and my education ripped away from me. So I that was really inspired by that. And selfishly, I also was just loving listening to weird and wonderful facts about, wasps or venom or whatever it may be. So it was an odd experience. But in terms of what you're talking about, the acceleration, I've always had that, you called it entrepreneurial, and I've always called myself just a bit of a nuisance. I've always had that kind of curious, reaching out to people, trying to build connections where I can, and perhaps that persistence, and that being kind of annoying and asking, hey, can I do this? If this doesn't exist, can we make it exist? That kind of attitude for me is always been there. Where it takes me, I don't know, but we'll see. Yeah.
There's a guy I follow. I've got a few online mentors. A guy called Jesse Itzler, and the way he's an ultra runner. He's written a ton of books, but he's one of his things he says about that is he's like, keep knocking the door, keep knocking, and when that door doesn't get opened, he says, just climb in the window. Just you've got to be a nuisance. I do it. How do I get guests? How do I reach out? You have to be polite. You got to present yourself well. You got to have a bit of a polished backlog of what you've done. And when the agent says no, and that person says no, you go straight to the person, or you go straight to there, or where can you get an introduction, or how do I do this? Or right, I'll let that sit. And then I know they're friends with them, and them. I'm going to go there, and there. Then I'm going to come back round. I completely see how you've done it, to the point that my daughter watched me doing podcasts, and she's now interviewed Everest summiteer Molly Hughes, cold water swimmer Gilly MacArthur, Diva Amon, who you might be familiar with. My daughter, my daughter's 8, Skyla, and she's sat here and interviewed them. She's got 10-minute podcasts with them. So it's things like that. It's all about, and that takes me quite nicely to what the bit that Skyla wants to know is, how did you get into all this? How did it all start? What was your first opportunity, that first email or phone call that came in and said, look, we'd like to do something? How did it start for you?
Yeah, so I started making really rubbish like wildlife videos just by myself, or with a friend, just whatever I could really, on the Welsh coast, or when I started, left sixth form, and then I started uni. I literally would just go out and practice and just try and put together some stories. And those videos went on YouTube. They don't exist anymore, before anyone Googles it. But they were kind of the beginnings of learning how to tell a story and how to convey, I guess, because I was studying biology. I then went on to study animal behavior, and I've gone on to do a part-time PhD. So the understanding of the mysteries of the natural world, that's absolutely what drives me and what I love, and has always been there. But I wanted to share that with others, and my echo chamber was very small. My friends and family were outdoorsy. My friends not so much, but they weren't really into wildlife and all of that. So I found myself just going out and making these videos. I decided I wanted to find the biggest wildlife agent in the industry, Joe Sarsby. So I was like, right, that's it. I'm going to put together some content and try and send her a video and see what she thinks. She said, no, not good enough, go away, do better. So I did, went away, got some more content, found a way of communicating those stories better. And eventually she said she'd take me on if I got interest from someone. And CBBC, don't know how they saw my stuff on YouTube, but they did see a YouTube video of mine, and they brought me in for an audition for one of my first gigs ever, called the Let's Go Club. I was the wildlife presenter on it, and it was a great opportunity to, I guess, build first experience in broadcasting, but also to understand how important kids television is, because I haven't done too much kids since. It was how I started. I recently did something for Frozen Planet 2, a live lesson, but it was brilliant because it's not about you, it's about the kids, and it's about how excited they get. And I fed off that energy. And so in that first kind of series that we filmed, the Let's Go Club on CBBC, I was very lucky to work with the team that I did. Massive team, huge studio, big jib swinging across. I thought, blinking heck, this is what it's like, but loved it. Having the kids there in the room, it really kind of builds you up. So yeah, that was kind of my first introduction into broadcast. And then Joe was like, okay, cool, let's go. And she's still my agent today, and she's fabulous.
It's can I say that will give Skyla hope, and I don't mean that disrespectfully to you, you've done it, you've been there, but it's possible. It's
Oh
possible
yeah.
to go out and create your own content and it's nowadays it's letting kids know when they are told that, no, that's crap, that is no good, not to quit.
Absolutely.
To say, okay, and it's important for us as parents to say, don't worry about that feedback. Don't quit. Don't throw the camera. Okay, have the tantrum now, but we're starting again tomorrow.
Yeah, love that. So is Skylar, is she getting into podcasting?
She's a podcaster. She's 8 years old now. She loves it. She's obsessed with the ocean. She's an ambassador for a couple of things. We call ourselves the Get After It family. It's all a play on the podcast.
Love
So
it.
we shoot around. I've got 2 boys as well. They're more football, rugby at the moment, but I mean, we're all going down to Kendal. So Skylar will interview somebody down there. She'll do something. We're going to the book launches. We're going to the bits and pieces. But that's it's fortunate, and I post that on Instagram that what I do. Like I launched Molly Hughes's latest book, Blue Scotland, the Everest Adventure, and my kids were in the front row, and I'm thinking, God, this is a terrible idea. And they sat, and they were great, and we had a fantastic night. This is possible for me to take my family everywhere I go.
Yeah,
You know, which I love. There's a few things I can't, but even if I'm at the rugby at Murrayfield doing the after dinner stuff or after the game stuff, my kids are there. And now they know players, they know. So it's taking them on this journey with me that I've loved. And Skylar, being my oldest, she has just kind of absorbed the interest in the ocean, which is her mum's side and surfing and all that sort of stuff. But it's something that she's interested in. We don't push it, but she sat here and she's done this, and she's spoke me, Diva Amon. She watched the Will Smith documentary on Nat Geo.
Yeah.
She's asked, how did you go to the toilet? You know, just like kids, the questions kids would ask, and Diva's laughing. Great question.
Well, I mean, an inspiration, obviously. And I mean, to hear that story, she's 8 years old and she's already a podcaster. I think we don't give younger people enough credit, but to have, you know, I guess parent like yourself and your wife to encourage that is really important. So yeah, I think you're going to be out of a job soon.
I hope so. I hope so, because she's better at it than me. I'm not going to keep you too much longer, but something that I want to thank you for is you've put Shetland completely on the map for my family and us, because we want to see the orcas.
Yes, amazing.
Yeah, I had no idea he could go up, and not every time you'll see them, but I had no idea that
really
happens. No, nobody will. Who knows that? Who's going up to Shetland to see the orcas? None of my friends come home from the summer holidays saying, "Oh, we're in Shetland."
Yeah,
it's not that common.
Oh, it's such a special place, Shetland. I've been brought to kind of various projects about salmon farming. Unfortunately, it's taken me to Shetland on a few occasions, and I knew about the orca, but over the past few years, I've 2 times I've gone to see them now to film the orca specifically, and honestly, I've been lucky to see orca all over. But it is one of the most magical places to see them because of the proximity of how these orca kind of move along these coastlines. And honestly, you can be like 5 meters standing on a coast, and there is a towering dorsal fin just passing you. And there's the blow of it's unbelievable. You have to go.
Am I right? Is it around July time? When's the time that you might see them, that they might come in a bit closer?
So the pod that is renowned for being around Shetland, they're called the 27s. There's 2 big males, and they largely patrol most of Shetland, but they do move over to the West Hebrides as well, the west coast of Scotland. So they kind of move between the 2. I would say July is always the best time, just because they tend to be active, good weather, better weather, I should say, in Shetland. I've always had success in July. And then towards the kind of end of the summer, say September, they move away from eating seals to then porpoise. So their behavior changes throughout the year. You can technically go and see them any time of year. But again, if you want a positive experience, I guess with weather and everything else, I'd go July. And the main thing is, or the thing that sticks out for me, is the connection you find with the people who are also going to see these orca, because they're zooming around the island. You know, you hear of a sighting on the Facebook group. There's an orca watch Facebook group. There's a message that goes, you know, off this headland at this time, heading north. And that's it. You're off. Your day is then occupied with catching the ferries, you know, racing along these roads to safe speed to find these orca. And then one particular day when we were filming a project about watching orca from land and not from boats, because you absolutely can do that in Shetland. We were with them for about 6 hours, and it was just a case of headland hopping all day. We saw them breaching and, you know, playing and tail slapping. Yeah, it was phenomenal. You have to go. Not just because they're orca, but because the type of encounter that you can have, which I think is also really important.
No, it sounds fantastic, and I love the way that you promote it. And you know, the tours board in Shetland should be giving you a commission, because it does sound amazing. It does sound amazing. You've been all over. I hope if I do catch you at Kendal next week, if you're there, we'll maybe catch up for 5 minutes. You maybe meet Skylar and the team.
I love that. Honestly, if she's into oceans and she's a podcaster, it sounds like I need to meet her more than anything else. So thank you.
No, Lizzie, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. And thanks for everything you do for our world. It's fantastic.
Thank you.